Beaten up by strangers, bound and gagged, a man crawls to the door of his flat crying for help. This is the autumn of 1985, and the man is Krakow priest Tadeusz Zaleski, an active member of the opposition. Immediately after the attack, he was personally forced to readjust the facts for the communist militia archive. 21 years later, employees of the Polish Institute for National Remembrance came across the video footage in the Secret Service archives. They also found a 100-page file on the chaplain that documents in detail his work with the anti-communist union movement, Solidarność. Looking through the files, Zaleski discovered that a fellow clergyman had denounced him to the authorities. I was surprised to find proof in the files that priests were among those who worked for the Secret Service. I had never suspected that. What shocked the former priest most was the reaction of his superiors to the facts that had been unearthed. Not only did the Archbishop Curia fail to reply to his requests for advice for many months, but when they finally did, it was only to suggest that he destroyed the embarrassing evidence. Father Zaleski chose a different path. In memory of all the regime's victims, and as a descendant of Armenian immigrants, he felt obliged to ask for a public confrontation with those members of the clergy that had served the communist regime. Today, hiding collaboration with the communist secret service is a criminal offence in Poland. There is one major exception to this law, and that is the Catholic Church. It holds a privileged position within the Polish state. Those priests have never confessed their guilt in the 17 years since the fall of communism. They have never apologized to the people they spied on. Today, they often occupy very high positions in the church hierarchy, not just in our diocese.
Funkcje w naszej archidiecezji, ale nie tylko w naszej, tylko także w innych diecezjach też.
The appeal made by this Krakow priest has had an effect. Put under pressure to disclose the identity of suspected agents, a bishopric conference admitted for the first time that there had been cases of priests collaborating with the regime and asked the victims for forgiveness. Not only this, but the Krakow Archdiocese announced the creation of an internal investigation committee. There, they discovered surveillance of the clergy by agents of Section 4 of the Secret Service had been systematic and extensive.
Zastraszeni byli wszyscy. Oczywiście nie każdy człowiek był.
Everyone was intimidated, but clergymen were particularly singled out to be spied on.
Każdemu klerykowi, który przychodził do
A
seminarium,
file was made for each priest that entered the seminary.
I oczywiście
Later,
szukano
they would try to recruit
dojścia do
him as a long-time
niego,
collaborator.
żeby mieć ich w ręce i
The aim
użyć
was to
wtedy,
keep priests under control
to jest
and
to
use
się
them
im
when the
przyda.
appropriate time came.
Oczywiście różnorodność tego
Many
kontaktu
methods were used.
istniała.
If it was found out that a priest had strayed from his moral obligations by having an affair or causing a car accident, this was used to blackmail him into service. But really any pretext was good enough for the Secret Service to put intense pressure on individuals and force them to sign collaboration contracts.
Żeby takiego człowieka wziąć pod szczególną opiekę i wtedy wymusić na nim ewentualnie także podpisanie współpracy.
Paper files that prove collaboration of Catholic priests with the communist regime are now stored in the archives of the Institute for National Remembrance that currently researches crimes committed under the communist regime. Until recently, the Polish episcopate had relied on the assumption that the Section 4 files that document the surveillance of the church by the state had been destroyed when communism fell. But the latest bestseller on the Polish market, The Pope's Agents, puts an end to the myth of the Church's infallibility under communism. As a historian at the Institute for National Remembrance, its author was among the first to gain access to confidential files. The security apparatus was not just there to collect information, but also tried to influence individual bishops and the Church as a whole. Pope John Paul II had always been aware of it. Proof of this is a document that dates from 1973, in which he asks all priests to notify the Curia of contacts they might have had with Secret Service officials and to report conversations they might have had with them. The author didn't reveal the identities of agents that worked in the close circle around Pope John Paul II. But code names that were used are easy enough to decipher. Publication was followed by a heated debate over the credibility of the sources. Those documents came from the enemies of the Church. That's why they have been used with evil intent. They are incomplete and biased. The necessary cleansing of the past that is needed will never happen if documents are used to create hasty condemnations. On the contrary, it will only cause unrest and injustice. Radvanovice, a Krakowian suburb. For the past 19 years, Father Zaleski has managed a daycare centre for mentally disabled children. As a young man, dreams of studying at the Vatican were shattered by the refusal of communist officials to let opponents travel abroad. I didn't want to hear any of it. I never went to Rome and never got to finish my studies. I listened to my superiors and did not speak to or collaborate with the secret services. I paid a high price for this. In Arch-Catholic Poland, dealing with its communist past has turned out to be quite painful for the Church. Now, it seems that up to 15% of priests had ties with the Secret Service. But the authority of the Church, as a stronghold against totalitarianism, remains intact. The so-called JP2 generation that grew up during the 25-year pontificate of John Paul II does not show any interest in learning about that past.